So I watched the US remake of Funny Games this past week, and damn son, this might just be one of the smartest movies I have ever seen. We were intending on watching the original, but we actually had very little choice on the matter, as the original that we found offered no subtitles. So remake it was, and that's okay, because this isn't your usual Hollywood remake. Michael Haneke has quite literally remade the movie, shot for shot, word for word, heck, even set for set. It's just now with American actors and in English. He said he made Funny Games perfectly the first time round. The only issue was the language, and I kinda love that. He's widened the audience without diminishing the viewing experience. In fact, I've heard so many people say that the remake is better simply because the performances are so much stronger here. But with all that being said, let's get into why I found Funny Games to be such an intriguing watch. We will be getting into some spoilers and we will be dissecting the themes of the movie, so if you don't want anything spoilt for you, please go check the film out and then return to this video. You have been warned. For me, Funny Games US is the ultimate meta movie. It's not only breaking down its own horror genre and how Hollywood have diluted and satirised the field without actually seeing the effects it has on society, but it's also breaking down the audience and what they came here for, what they want or expect from this viewing experience. The movie opens with a shot of a happy family in a car, listening to classical music. It really is a scene of the perfect family. Everyone's smiling, the sun is shining, everyone is prim and proper, as is the music. That is until it's juxtaposed with the insane primal screaming of death metal as the title cards appear on screen. Not only is this a tease that the film might not take a traditional path, but equally a subtle note on the falsehood of human beings, our grace and beauty very much being pushed to the forefront as our presented image. We want to show the very best of ourselves to each other so that we can fit in and be loved or liked, despite at our core being nothing more than animals with primal needs. Notice how the family doesn't even react to the change of music. In fact, they seem happy to hear the change. I think the director is trying to suggest an acceptance to that primal behaviour. Sticking to these ideas of self-presentation, the whole trip is planned around a game of golf, one of life's more luxurious sports that's often attached to the wealthy. A polite and cordial game where play is quietly respected and applauded. It's quite different to a football match at Red Star Belgrade in comparison. Not only are the two killers golf caddies, which gives them the representation of wealth and polite demeanour, but equally as caddies, you can see the metaphor that they are there to help the family along the metaphorical course of this movie. I also want to make a quick side note on these killer characters. They're also very subtly depicted as potentially not being real. Something more metaphorical, as not only do they seem to be in on the sick joke, but their movements are odd and jarring, jumping from one side of the screen to the other in a blink of an eye. It's a really nice touch that not only deepens the intrigue around these characters, but it also heightens the anxiety. Between their hideous actions and their heinous ideas, the killers are always expressing the importance of manners, despite having very few themselves. Again, presenting that idea of falsehood in people, all the dressing just being there so that you can really get what you want from each other. The two killers actually struggle to have manners towards one another, one killer constantly calling the other Tubby, despite him clearly not liking it, which does move us on nicely to the next point. Funny Games also explores the sexual connection human beings have to such themes and genres. There are not only several phallic representations and metaphors throughout the movie, but there are outright conversations about it. The killer only seems truly offended or upset by the comments of being called Tubby. His self-image is important to him, and he clearly has insecurities about not having the ideal perfect male body. This is so much the case that Naomi Watts' character is stripped naked in a squirmingly uncomfortable scene just so her body can be examined and admired in comparison. She has the perfect ideal woman's body, at least to the warped mind of these killers. I do see this as a statement about Hollywood and the treatment of female actors. It's pretty crystal clear. It almost does play out like a casting call, but a very uncomfortable one. It's all about the perfection and the representation. This is what Hollywood has led us to believe and has set us up to fail on because it just isn't reality. It's caused an inability to see beauty in the truth and only want the size Zero model with the fake lips or the guy with the six-pack that's secretly injecting steroids to maintain it. The Hollywood satirization has nullified the fear of it all and made it feel commonplace and near acceptable. The half-naked woman running from the crazed killer is an all too well-known image to even the briefest of moviegoers. Something seen so often that it is no longer scary, and it now, over time, feels like it is more important to sexualise the female character, with a dominance from what is usually the male killer. You might not notice it, but it is there. Another quick side note, I also think the director is saying something in the fact that one of the killers is always hungry and constantly eating, whilst the other consistently shames him for it. I personally think that this is a direct attack at Hollywood for constantly churning out more and more and more crap with less effort in each rendition of whatever franchise they continuously milk for money. And I think the shaming from the other killer is quite literally the director being disappointed with that fact. The film outright compares its violence to something as simple and everyday as NASCAR. Not only is it hitting those sporting themes again and tying into the games of which the families are forced to play, but again it's a direct contrast between the two forms of entertainment. I thought choosing NASCAR was the perfect metaphorical cherry on this cake, because it's also cyclical, just like these attackers are. So cyclical, in fact, that the killers need constant reminding of the time as they hold these games over and over again. The positioning of the television is clever too. It sits in the background whilst the trauma unfolds around it. The film quite literally tests you. Can you look away from a car crash with a literal car crash? I should also mention that the violence all takes place off screen in Funny Games, and this isn't by mistake. It's again deconstructing its own genre and subverting the audience's expectations. They came to see a horror movie where a family is kidnapped and tortured. Why? When you break it down like that, why would someone want to see that? Should they see that? Bearing in mind that these things could very easily happen and probably have on many occasions in the past. It's harkening back to that human primal nature, the adrenaline rush of emotions that such trauma can produce, and we the audience riding the high of that trauma for our own kicks, despite it being at someone else's expense. I've got to say, it really did pull the rug out from underneath my feet. I absolutely couldn't help but stop and wonder why my absolute favourite viewing experiences are usually things that get my heart racing, like Uncut Gems or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What is that visceral kick that I get from these movies? What does that say about me? But equally, I do want to praise Funny Games for not being pandering or berating its audience. It simply asks you to think about it and consider it. That's all. And it's worth doing so because the film has a really solid point and it makes it exceptionally well. The biggest moments in the movie that really smack you across the face with these ideas and themes, and do so in a splendidly jaw-dropping way, is the infrequent and subtle use of direct address from the killers. Not only do they seem to be totally in on the sick joke and the messaging on the film, but equally they consider the audience's feelings and reactions.
I mean, what do you think? You think they stand a chance? You're on their side, aren't you?
By using your own typical investment and judgment of a movie against you, they make you guilty by association. And on some level, you are. Funny Games even goes as far as rewinding its own movie, when Naomi Watts kills one of the killers. It isn't supposed to go that way. This isn't a traditional horror flick where a great injustice is set straight by the heroes. The real world rarely works like that, and it isn't what Funny Games is asking you to consider. We aren't here to break down a flight of fancy, we're breaking down the true horror to a situation that we quite disturbingly fluff and pad into basic revenge tales that we as an audience can ride the high of, despite the fact that these awful things could very much really happen to anyone at any given time and probably already have. There is a bizarre irony to Funny Games. Knowing full well what this film might entail, you still paid money and took time out of your day to hunt this material down for entertainment value. And all Funny Games wants to do is stop and make you ask a one-worded, simple question. Why? I can see myself thinking about this movie for a very long time to come, and I can also see myself wanting to revisit it in the future, and I think I'll get more from it on each visit. It's a very subtly layered movie that will go to depths that you might not be expecting, but it is absolutely worth your time. And I'm going to give Funny Games US an 11 out of 10, making it the latest inductee into the IMO Hall of Fame.